Dad, you don't need your glasses?
Nah, I'm all right. Thank you.
You're all right, yeah?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Then cool, mate. Cool, mate. Lovely jubbly.
Lovely jubbly.
Well, let's just wait as people filter in and find their seats. We have ushers on each aisle, so please find your seats in an orderly fashion.
We have a comedian in the house today.
Okay.
All right, so for everybody who's watching online, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We're going to get started in just a few moments. We want to give you some time, maybe another 5 minutes or so, to just invite your friends, tell a friend, send the link out. We are streaming live on YouTube Live. We're streaming live on YouTube Live, so send that link to your friends. And on the SEC Youth Ministries page on Facebook, there's a link there as well. You should be able to see the live link there. So just click on that and you should be good to go. We'll kick off in around 5 minutes time, just to give everyone an opportunity to get started.
Aaron, do you remember Aaron from school, Dad?
Yeah.
Aaron said, "Giff, you look the same, bro."
Tell him I can still take him on in football too.
That's funny.
So yeah, everyone, welcome. Those who have come early, thank you for joining us. We're just waiting a few moments for just giving you guys a chance to send the link around, tell a friend, tell one and all.
Yeah, find your Rawal sends her regards. That's Rawal from Reading. Yeah, find your seats, guys, in an orderly fashion. For all my IG viewers, the link is in my bio to go on YouTube. So if it gets a bit higgy-hagger, feel free to jump on the YouTube live link.
Let me see. Johnny, can you hear me properly?
Yeah.
The volume is good, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mic was slightly better before, but
yeah, I took out the headphone. I was gonna go live on my thing, but let me just leave the Instagram shenanigans to you.
No, jump on. Yeah, I mean, jump on. So yeah, everyone find your seats. We'll be getting started in about 3 minutes. We have refreshments here, water, so feel free to get your own cup. It's gonna get quite deep, so just make sure you're nice.
Gifford, you're having an insight into what your son's online personality is like.
Yeah, I'm quite petrified actually, because he's a little too spontaneous for me.
It's gonna be a learning curve for everybody involved. So guys, just another 2 minutes, please send out the link. We're on YouTube Live. Please make comments, please interact with us.
We'll be taking questions throughout. Again, for all my IG viewers, the stream on YouTube is a better format, so that's in my bio. If you want to stay on your phone, feel free to stay on your phone and use YouTube. Any questions or comments, feel free to submit. But the link is in my bio, and feel free to share that around. Oh, snap. Sorry about that.
Feel free to say hello on any of the links so I know you're there. I can just see numbers. All right, just 1 more minute.
All right, we'll get started in a minute.
Again, YouTube Live, just jump on the SEC Youth Ministries YouTube page, and we are live there right now. Okay, I can see people are coming on the YouTube. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I forgot to put the link in the family group chat.
Oh yeah, let me do the same.
Yeah. Oh, sick. Okay, there we go. All right, real good, yeah?
Yeah, we're good. We are good. Just one more second. Gifford, I've been reprimanded and told to refer to you as doctor or professor. All this casual stuff is
Well, tell them to get you. Tell them my name. I was born with Gifford, and I'll die with Gifford. So I'm happy with Gifford.
There you go. I've cleared myself now. I can't take any more heat for that. Okay, so we're ready to go now. Thank you everybody who's joining us online. Thank you for those who are on Instagram, on Jonathan's platform. Welcome and thank you for your time. What we are going to be doing over the next week or so is pushing a lot more. Really, this is like the rebirth or the relaunch of the youth ministry's activities online. Our digital content strategy is going to be unfurling and unrolling over the next week or two. And the aim is for us to have content every day for you guys. So that as we're here in lockdown, we have things for you guys to engage with, things for you to get involved with. We want you guys to submit content, and we'll be rolling out further information about that as we go through the next few days. So we're just looking for all of you guys who are content creators in health, in fitness, in relationship counseling, in all the rest of that kind of good stuff. Please get in touch with us, especially relationship counselors. There's a lot of married people who are stuck indoors together for longer than they've ever done so before. So they might be, they might need your help now more than ever needed your help before. So yeah, just get in touch with us and let's see what we can do together. Let me just spend a couple of minutes quickly introducing our speakers for today, or our panelists that are going to be involved in this discussion. First off, we have Jay, aka Jayy Angelo. He's an artist, an educator, a content creator, and he will be helping me moderate this conversation. And joining him is Dr. Gifford Rhamie, Professor of Theology at Newbold College. And he is a pretty big catch for us to have on this conversation today. You'll be shedding some light on a few topics. He is a lecturer of ethnicity and culture in early Christianity and contemporary Praxis. And he's also the director of field education at Newbold. So he's going to be bringing a wealth of information and knowledge to us today on this conversation. And my name is Thomas. Some of you know me. I'm just your local troublemaker on Facebook and Instagram. Also a stylist, creative director, and I am now in Anthony's absence working as digital content coordinator for us moving forward with our digital content strategy. So that's who we are. And before we kick off, we want to say two things. The first is we want to encourage all the viewers to please submit questions online. We want to interact with you guys as much as possible. We want to take questions from you guys as much as possible. And we want to hear what you guys have to say, whether it's comments or questions. So please interact with us. We're on Instagram live right now through Jay's Instagram page. For those of you who follow him, I think that's a lot of you. Jump on there, or on YouTube. The link to the YouTube live is on the SEC Youth Ministries Facebook page and also on my page. So get involved and let's hear from you. Let's begin by quickly just kind of giving you guys a flavor or an idea of where we are in terms of our Christianity and our faith. Jay, do you want to kick us off? How would you describe how you identify in your faith life?
So I've got to be careful here because my dad's here.
Absolutely.
I would say that I'm kind of in the generation of young people who were brought up in church. I probably identify as more spiritual than religious, as that's like the same for a lot of millennials right now. A lot of us term ourselves as that. But I still see a very real need for spirituality, more specifically Christianity, but spiritualities that help us collectively share our light, understand how important it is to connect with our Creator, understand how important it is to connect with each other. So I'm from an Adventist background, theologically. I still define as that to a large extent, but I have many of my own views. So
okay, cool. Cool. I myself, I am also Adventist in terms of my background. I was born into the Adventist church. My parents were Adventists when I was born. I'm now 34 years old, 35 next month. I'll be celebrating my birthday in quarantine. Fun times.
Oh, man, what's up?
And so, but how I identify now is probably on the fringes of Adventism. Life experience has kind of meant that I have kind of drifted out to the fringes, but I am maybe working my way and finding my way in as I work in youth ministries, especially with Anthony Fuller. But I'll probably describe myself quite similarly as Jay, as spiritual. Maybe the religious has taken a bit of a backseat, but I'm on the fringes of Adventism, looking in. I'm looking to sort of make my way back into a more permanent position. What about yourself, Gifford?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit more conventional than you guys. Having been brought up in the church all my life, the Adventist church that is. I also have played leadership roles as a pastor, and for the past 20 years I've been teaching, lecturing at Newbold College, where we train pastors primarily for pastoral ministry, and I have also taught in other universities as well in this country and abroad. So I do have some experience, I guess, within Christianity at large, and more specifically within Adventism.
Fantastic. So obviously now those in the Christian faith practice are celebrating Easter. And I would like to begin with you, Gifford. What does Easter mean to you? How do you view Easter?
Yeah, it's I was brought up looking at Easter with some tension, but having said that, I'm latterly I like Easter because of its synchronicity with change. Mm-hmm. And by change, I mean the nature's cycle of change, nature's cycle of death and rebirth. And so this season reminds me that there's no Friday without Sunday, at least from God's perspective. And certainly there's no Sunday without Friday. So, so the idea of death and life, death and rebirth is somehow integral for me with this season.
When you say no Friday without Sunday, Dad, can you just define that a little bit more clearly for those who may not understand what you mean by that?
Well, by normally, the way, Gifford, sorry, let me just, I forgot to also mention that Gifford is Jay's dad. So that's another nice little dynamic that's going to be coming out throughout this conversation. So sorry, Gifford, carry on.
Yeah. Well, normally we do think of there's no Sunday without Friday, in the sense that there is no resurrection without death. There's no rebirth without death. Rebirth by definition means that you're being born again, so to speak. So something anew has risen in your life, in your journey, in your life's journey. But often we don't think of it the other way around. We don't think, well, there's no Friday without Sunday, meaning that there's no death without rebirth. And I would like to think, I would want us to somehow recapture this season by thinking of death in terms of not the end, not the final, not the finality of life, but death as a comma, that something to happen after death, and there is life after death. And I would hope that as we talk about different things tonight, I would hope that we can actually process that idea that there is life after death, and especially in this coronavirus moment, we need to hear that more than ever before.
Okay, Jay, do you have any thoughts on Easter? What does it mean to you? Has it been important to you? Is it important to you now? How do you feel about it?
I just want to tip my hat to my dad. I thought that was pretty good. Good stuff.
Okay, and I'm trying to get used to seeing your name as Jayy Angelo, but that is not the name I gave you when you were born. But we'll work with it somehow.
Yeah, we'll work with that. We'll work with that. Trying to be as multifaceted with my identity as possible. But I think that's a conversation for another day. In terms of Easter, I think prior to understanding the whole death and life concept, or seeing Easter within that lens, I've not been that gassed about Easter, if I'm honest. I've kind of seen it as another. I think with Christianity, we don't take our festivals. Our festivals have weird relationships with pagan history. So we kind of have this weird relationship with whenever it's one of our festival periods, especially because it's also a big fixation in our secular cultures and communities culture. So Easter, Christmas, etc. have more been about family than anything spiritual. However, there have been things in my life, experiences I've had, which has forced me to come to a very difficult confrontation with death and life, whether that's with losing people, whether that's with coming to face with my own mortality, and then also having experiences that I've had to allow die, relationships I've had to allow die, concepts I've had to allow die, and understand that the rebirth is a painful thing, but it's also a beautiful thing. And I think the Easter story, it's a shame that that's not really, when we think of Easter, that's not what sticks in our heads, but for me, that's a real powerful part of the Easter story, that life is about death and rebirth. And
so it has more of a conceptual meaning to you than it does a religious significance. Okay, I think for myself, it's probably quite similar, but maybe somewhere in between Gifford and Jayy, in the sense that I think what I have drawn the most value from is that pattern of death and life, because I think it replicates itself and emerges in so many facets of our lives. And it's just interesting to see it in this particular incarnation. And I think this is probably one of the earliest, at least in Christian history, I think, where we see such a significant emphasis on this, on the meaning or the importance of death in life, which has then come to be the cornerstone of Christian belief. So for me,
it has to be.
It's the significance. Yeah, it's the significance conceptually of how death and life intermingle in all of aspects of life. And we're gonna look at some of those things. Jayy, you touched on your mortality, coming to face with your mortality, or conscious of your mortality, and we're going to touch on that as we proceed through the conversation. Now, one thing that is common to us all at the moment around the world is this kind of I call it a mass incarceration in our homes. We've all been told to be on lockdown and to limit our activities a lot more than we might usually do. And Gifford, I just want to ask you the question: how do we cope, or even beyond coping, how do we remain optimistic, and how do we thrive in and amongst all this uncertainty and worry that COVID has brought to us all?
I think this challenges us to really project our lives forward spiritually. And by spiritual, I mean beyond the material, beyond just the emotional, beyond just the intellectual. I think we are challenged in ways that we've never been challenged before. I call this the new normal. This is the new normal. And I think when life is in flux, when life is uncertain around us, I think the spiritual thing to do is to tap into the power of love, because love for me is the ultimate spiritual power, and God is love. And by thinking of what we can do or how we can respond to these times in terms of love, I think it changes the dynamic, it changes the focus. The focus is less on oneself, perhaps, and more on others. And I think a challenge of our times is to look beyond ourselves and to see that this coronavirus has really uncovered a lot of cracks and fissures in our society, in the way we hold this society together, and many of the fault lines fall on the poor and the people who are voiceless, the people who are without a job and haven't been without a job for a while, or people who are have pre-existing conditions or health conditions, and we tend not to look out for them. And the beauty of what we're going through now is hearing stories of people in our neighborhood who've tapped into the power of that love and thought less about themselves and thought about their neighbors and seen how their neighbors doing, what can we do to create community that is more than jumping into your car 7:30 in the morning, turning on the engine and going to work, coming back 5:30 and then getting on with business, whatever your day might look like. So I would say one way of coping with this situation is to tap into the power of love.
And I think one of the ways that I found, one of the things that I found really interesting and intriguing, you're talking about how many of the most, the hardest hit people through this have been the poor and the disenfranchised. And one thing that has been interesting to see is the altruism of society. People have really gone out of their way to help those who are marginalized and the poor. How do we manage that as Christians and even as non-Christians? And Johnny, maybe you can come in on this. Is a lot of young people have, sorry, what's that?
Define altruism for those who may not know.
Okay, so a lot of people have been thinking about others more than they think of themselves, and there's been a big focus on doing things for those who can't do for themselves. So whether it's picking up the shopping for the elderly who can't get out, or whether it's going to places where there's assisted living and doing shopping for those people, or things of that nature, things which are just more about doing things for others. And 8 o'clock and every Thursday, we've all come out of our houses to clap for the NHS because everyone has an emphasized view of the importance of those people who work in the front lines. We typically see this kind of selflessness as a Christian attribute, but we're now seeing it from those who are not Christian and those who describe themselves as faithless. What does a Christian do in society when their job is being taken up by those who don't claim to have a faith? And many of us who do have a faith have been quite slow to act in certain situations. How do we view ourselves in light of society's altruism when we've been much of our evangelism has been off the back of they don't possess those qualities? How do we view ourselves?
If I can attempt to answer that, I think coming from the perspective of a young person, church, for a long time, church hasn't represented the safe space that it had first intended to represent, or during our teens when we were going to church with our parents. The church of our later teens and maybe early youth hasn't really been that safe space, hasn't really provided for the needs that we've had. So in terms of life and death, a lot of us have had a life of death in our faith. If you think about the English culture across its history has had a death period in terms of being a spiritual nation. It's now largely a secular nation. Churches are emptying, if you're looking at the statistics. But a lot of us consider ourselves spiritual, right? Like even those who don't even necessarily use the language of Christianity still talk about the universe, still talk about energy, still talk about meditation, still touch on a lot of things which are biblical as well, which are actually in the Bible. But they don't necessarily use that lane,
language.
That language or that lane. And I think what we're seeing it. There's a huge need. Like we're seeing, it's a very difficult time. I'm a teacher, so there's a lot of high risk, high need students. There's a lot of people who can't access other people. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of depression. There's a lot of needs. So I think as a society, we're being forced to come to face with those needs. I think when we're hustle and bustle, especially in London, you could be on a tube, someone will knock you over, they don't care, they're just trying to get to their job. But because we've all been made to be still, we're having to come to confront our own consciousness a lot more as a nation, as a world. And that shift, that energy shift is links us. And I think it's affecting all of us. So
one of the things, just cutting in, one of the things I'm hoping that young people would reassess are some of their own personal aspirations, especially their material aspirations, which are important, but to reassess them along serious values. So what's of interest for me, for example, is the fact that the coronavirus pandemic has revealed who the essential workers are in our society. And the essential workers are the ones that we're coming out at 8 o'clock Thursday evenings to clap, right? And my daughter is serving in that field too. And these are the health practitioners, these are the carers, these are people who are delivering delivering our stuff to our doors. These are people who are the social workers who are looking out for those who need the help and so on. But the irony is that they are the least paid in society. So here you have, here you have the essentialists, all right, who are in this time of crisis. We need them more than anybody else, all right? But then again, they are the least paid. And this is a challenge for our young people, because our young people often think in terms of, well, I need to get a job that gets me a lot of money so that I can do this and I do that and do that, you know. And sometimes we forget, but there are more important things. And those more important things are the essential things. And I just want to encourage us to just reflect on that, maybe.
What is the spiritual value? Because I do agree with you at fundamental, but for if I think about a lot of the young people in my sphere, in my network, maybe first or second generation immigrants, a lot of us maybe have seen our parents go through struggles. I certainly have seen us have gone through certain struggles, and we're in a society that is so capitalistic, like everything is so capitalistically driven, that it's very difficult with all the, especially coming from a Afro-Caribbean background where a lot of our men are in jails or don't come out of school with the grades that they should come out of, or there's a lot of challenges that we face. So our shield is almost, all right, let's become middle class. All right, let's elevate financially. As many of us are also spiritual. So how do we align that with our spirituality without it? And how do we have a healthy relationship between our financial aspirations and our spirituality? Because there's many texts where God talks about the wealth in the storehouses being for his children, being for our people. So for those whose parents or grandparents who are immigrants, how do we, do you know what I mean? Have that relate? I don't know if the question's making sense.
I think it's making clear. Just a correction though, many of our grandparents who came to England from the former colonies were not immigrants, they were migrants.
Migrants, sorry, yeah.
They were invited. And you might want to even refer to some of them as settlers, but that's for another day.
It's another day.
The key thing is to remember that we were created. Our purpose as human beings is to serve others. That's what we are created to do. We are created. The best of our human spirit is demonstrated when we serve others. Now, once you sort that out, once you downpack that principle, then you can talk about getting all the money you need or whatever material aspirations one might have. The problem we tend to have is that we forget that very singular, critical premise upon which all humanity is built. And that is, we are primarily here to serve others. This is why the essential workers are so necessary right now, because what they are essentially doing is serving others. So I think, sorry, Tom.
No, just to right off the back of that, how do we, so we're talking about how to remain positive in crisis. And so with the young people, millennials, those younger youth who less and less identify with any kind of religion or spiritual outlook, or religious outlook rather, who are now showing such a great demonstrations of selflessness. How do we explain the presence of those attributes there if they are not coming from God? Is it just something they're doing in order to be positive and to just have good vibes, or is there something more to it than that? If a person who doesn't identify with religion is still exhibiting such selflessness?
Yeah, well, it's not an either or, you know, so you kind of setting it out as a binary thing, but it's not an either or question. Religion, at the best of times, is man-made. Okay, it's created by human beings. It's organized by human beings to conceptualize God in a particular way, right? God is above all religions, right? But at the end of the day, all human beings were created in the image of God. And so when we see the great human spirit of service to others, what we are seeing is a celebration of people being realigned, or people actually living out the image of God for which they were created. What we have to do, especially Adventists, is use our religion, not the religion to use us. But we ought to use our religion to energize us spiritually so that we do what we are meant to be doing and doing it well. I always say the genius of Adventism is that we conceptualize the world holistically. We believe that the mental, the spiritual, the physical, and the social spheres or domain are intermingled, are interlocked. You can never separate them. We live in a world that seeks to polarize these domains and we end up living as fragmented beings. So my thing is, let's use this religion to conceptualize living holistically. So when we give holistically. When we serve holistically.
And I love that point. But so a difficulty I have, a struggle I have, is that so your description as someone who has the gift of understanding the Bible in its purest forms in terms of the Greek, the Hebrew, actually having that knowledge, right? You are able to see religion in those terms, right? You're able to see religion as a tool, whereas a lot of us, when we go to university, we start studying and we start hearing other ideas. Religion is presented to us as a weapon. Religion is presented us as a structure of oppression. Religion is presented to us as something that restricts us, something that polarizes us, something that doesn't aid holistic living. Right now, the spheres of thought, and I know we're kind of deviating slightly from the topic, so Tom can...
I'll bring us back.
But the spheres of thought that are dominant in spiritual literature right now are those that talk about the universe, those that talk about energy, those that talk about meditation. And those spiritualities seem to have more space for holistic living, yoga, etc., than the church, where, you know what I mean, still come wear your skirt below your legs and
yeah. I hear what you're saying, and unfortunately, religion in many sectors of human living has become more important than the people it's serving. Unfortunately, that has happened. And when religion becomes more than the people it is serving, then religion seeks to simply self-preserve itself. It seeks basically to just feed itself. And sometimes it gets lost in that process of creating laws in order to control, rather than allowing the space for people to grow and for people to flourish. And as I said to you, the genius of Adventism is this holistic thing. And if you just look at that for a moment and say, well, as human beings, if we are empowered to live holistically in this way, then surely our giving will be enhanced. It will be enhanced because it won't be self-serving. Our giving wouldn't just be for one group, it will be for all peoples. Our giving will seek to be reciprocal, because we will understand that we might give, but people want to give to us also.
Mhm.
And we have as much to learn as from others as people have to learn from us. So, so I think rather than seeing religion and spirituality as antagonistic, let's see religion as that domain that ought to teach us how to live spiritually, how to function
So
spiritually.
bringing this back, because we could, this is the
Ready to
the
go
challenge.
a whole new road now.
When you have two Rhamies on one call, this is the challenge. Is trying to trying to bring it down into an accessible lane.
I got him in a corner. I got him in a corner.
So just to bring it back to our central theme of looking at this pattern of death and rebirth, would you then say in a very kind of precise and brief manner as we move on, would you then say that maybe the demise of religion or the death of religion is allowing the rebirth of this alignment with our calling to serve others? Because we're now unfettered by all of the things you just described, and we can now just focus on the giving.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the death of religion, because religion won't die. Simply, it can't. Okay, but what it can do is remake itself.
It's diffusion. It's diffusion. It's not its focus.
It can be better diffused, right? Yeah. So I would prefer to say, yes, there are presuppositions and assumptions, biases and prejudices about religion that need to die.
Okay.
All right. And what this situation is doing is allowing these presuppositions, assumptions, and so on to die, so that spirituality, even within religion, without, can flourish.
And I just want to add to that, in terms of the death of those presuppositions of what religion is, that's having to happen from those who are religious, as much as it's having to happen for those who aren't. So with churches being closed, people's spiritual centers, we have no access to the spiritual centers, the spiritual hospitals that are meant to serve us, that for many of us weren't serving us, for many of us weren't representing us. If you think about people who are LGBT, if you think about people who, maybe some of the younger people, if you think about whoever's been, seen,
the least of these,
the least of these, those who been put to the sidelines. Everything's kind of having to reset and go to scratch and work from scratch. And I think that's why the Easter framing is really interesting for the time that we're in, and it links all these things together, because we're now in a space where everything is being reset and we're having to go through a rebirth.
So just very quickly, we received a question from YouTube here, where Jodel Lendor, I hope I pronounced that correctly, has said that the thread is running quite deeply of the contrast between spirituality and religion, or religiousness. So can we define more clearly? Can we define more clearly exactly what religion means and where we draw the line between religion and spirituality? And I'm going to need us to do this within a minute, very, very quickly, so we can move on to the next section. So Gifford, if you can give us your take on the difference.
Simply, when we talk about religion, we're talking about something that's organized. So we're talking about an organized context where that seeks to structure the enabling of spirituality. That's what religions are meant to do. And they do that through institutions and institutions as in physical institutions, buildings and so on. They do it through institutions of worship, institutions of ritual. All of these are done in order to enable the flourishing of spirituality.
And what specifically is spiritual? What is the spiritual element within that?
Spirituality is the human ability to connect with that which is outside of themselves.
Okay.
The one who is outside of oneself. And the one in our context is God.
Okay. And Johnny, very, very quickly, I need you to exercise the spirit of brevity. What is spirituality and what is religion? So just
before I do that, just to give context to the term, the least of these, when we say the least of these, we're talking about those who are put on the sidelines by a
powerful fee.
Yeah, by a institutional power. So those who sit on the peripheries of that power's intent. In terms of
the voiceless and the poor, they can be the voiceless. Yeah.
In terms of the definition my dad just gave on religion is a definition I can sign up for. But it's very interesting how language works, because if you think about, I'd want the societal definition, or the definition that we're faced with, the definition that we experience, is really organized church or organized mosque or organized synagogue. That's really religion in terms of, and there are members in those institutions who then decide, okay, yeah, women can do this, women can't do that, right? Okay, these are the texts. From these texts, we read that this is when you have sex. All right, we read that this is what you wear. We read, and these they are the powers that be. So that distorts people's understanding of religion, which is why there's a lot of kickback, in my opinion, because religion is it has a man's face, which is what it becomes. But yeah, this is a whole nother conversation.
So you've given us a good segue into our next section there. Obviously, one of the major repercussions of COVID or the coronavirus situation is that there are no public gatherings which are allowed, and that includes church. And so church life as we've known it has had to pause at the very least. And it's threatening to change how we practice our religion, possibly in a way that will never return to its previous dimensions. And so, Gifford, the question I have for you is church in the way that we have known it still necessary for our spiritual growth or for our spiritual well-being, given that people have now learned or are learning or have been forced to learn to meet and evoke God in their homes or virtually in forums like these, or online on Zoom with their friends? Are we ever really going to go back to a place where people feel the necessity to meet physically in quite the same way, given that the appetite for that was already diminishing amongst the young anyway prior to coronavirus?
Yes, that's a very powerful question, and it's an abiding question because of what we're going through. Coronavirus is a game changer. The coronavirus pandemic is a game changer, and the longer we are in lockdown, is the deeper the effects of the change that we're about to experience. I think the challenge with church, and obviously I'm generalizing there because people would experience this differently in different parts of the world. But the challenge with the church in this country is that generally speaking, it is an aging church, and it has been very much tied to buildings, and understandably so. I think now with the change that has happened, we are refocusing on people and how we can actually connect, how we can relate, how we can serve each other. Bearing in mind that is very much the definition of church, because church in the Bible is not the building. The church in the Bible is the people. It's the actual word ecclesia, the called out ones. So
what was that word?
Ecclesia. Or some people pronounce it ecclesia. Yeah,
that's Greek, right?
For all our learners, all our watchers who may not understand ancient Greek, and anyone's there.
Sorry. And that word means the called out ones, the people who are called out by God to serve. And it's the gathering ones, but the gathering ones are the ones who are actually people. These are people. So I think in a real way, we're having to reconfigure the way we do church and understand or refocus on how we can reach people through other media other than.
So Gifford, a question that follows from that then is, again, looking at the death rebirth paradigm that Easter presents us, would you then say that the death of the building is potentially the opportunity for the rebirth of the personification of church, or the idea that I am the church? Do you think there will be a reinsurgence of that concept as a result of the death of the building? Because I think a lot of people were disorientated by the the fact that we couldn't meet anymore.
When you say the death of the building, it sounds so final, because we will go back to the building.
But you know what I mean.
I knew what I definitely know what you mean.
Yeah.
So with Easter, Jesus died on Friday, and he resurrected on Sunday morning. All right. Now, when he resurrected on Sunday morning. He resurrected in resurrecting, he resurrected a new body of people. And this new body of people were Jesus freaks, if you please, Jesus people who are moved and swayed and driven by the Jesus principles.
Right.
And this Jesus, in the wake of his resurrection and indeed ascension, this Jesus people literally changed the world around them. And I think in many ways we are having to now refocus on the regeneration of the people in terms of what are we doing with each other, for each other, and to each other. And I think that dynamic will even affect the way we meet in the buildings.
Just building on that point briefly, I think, and this speaks again to one of the purposes of this discussion, was to look at how we can still have hope in a very difficult time, because what ties these things together in terms of Easter, in terms of the death of the physical church, as it were, or the death, not in terms of a final way, because we're going to get to that, but death is not a final thing. And that's something that I really want us to get to, because there's a lot of people who are coming to contact with mortality, coming to contact with the fact that our lives are short and they might end. Do you know what I mean? People who love their lives might end. We are going to have to understand endings. We're going to have to be okay with endings. We live in a society where all the films and stuff give us an experience of ending that maybe isn't real, right? So then when we actually lose someone, we don't know how to process that. We lose it. Like every time there is a death, every time we lose someone, it's almost like we don't have, in my opinion, in this culture, a healthy coping mechanism for death. So in fact, let's just go into that one. We may go into something else after, but let's just go into that one quickly. How can, and this is for everyone, like how can we have a healthier relationship with death, with mortality, with the fact that our lives are short, of people who are spiritually awakened, people of faith? How should we, when you
I think for me, I always try and look at the most pragmatic lesson or application of something. And I think for me, the most feet on the ground takeaway from considering my mortality or the inevitability of my death is a renewed focus on what is it that I'm actually going to achieve, or what will my life mean, or rather putting meaning in the life that I do have. And so any propensity or any temptation to be wasteful with my time or my relationships with people are refocused very quickly when you consider your mortality. So I think it just gives you a renewed purpose in terms of relationships with people, because I think one of the things that COVID has shown us is the importance that the importance that we didn't realize was there in physically meeting with our people and spending time physically with our friends and family. And now when I look at my niece on FaceTime and I can see she has changed since the last month I saw her, it kind of focuses my mind on the importance of physical time spent together, enjoying each other's company and feeding into each other's lives. So I think that's one of the things.
What about when you may lose someone? So what is a healthy way of viewing loss of everyone's going to process loss in different ways, but what maybe as people who are spiritual, what is a healthy way of viewing loss? I have my own answer, but I want to kind of hear what.
Yeah, I think is a very good question. Just to back up a little, normally when we think of death, we see somebody in a coffin, or we see, there are various pictures of people of the death state, but often what we don't think of is corpse. The idea that the body has decayed, and that's death. All right. And I think the beauty about Easter is that when you live with the notion that something has to die in order for me to live on, in order for me to grow, in order for me to be, something has to die, I think you are developing a healthy relationship. Paul says, I die daily. And this is like, it's almost like he's looking forward for something to die. When students come into my classroom, I say, you have come into this classroom to die. And you should see their faces. What? I thought I was going to get a degree, man. I thought I was going to get a, you know, I thought this was just Greek, or I thought, you know, I thought this was just, you know, pastoral studies or something. I said, no, you're coming here to die. And the idea is something has to go in order for you to gain, is something that is habitualized. It's something that we grow accustomed to. If you keep it as one of your mantras, like Paul did, for example. So, you know, I've experienced a lot of loss in my life, all right? And some of them were not anticipated loss. Those are the most difficult ones. The difficult ones are the ones that you did not anticipate, all right? And you're in the thickness of the night, in the dark, in 3 o'clock in the morning, when it's thick night, and you're wondering, what am I going to do? How am I going to go through here? You suddenly understanding, but you know, there's life after death, you know. There's actually life after death. Gives you another perspective of that night moment.
Yeah.
It literally does give you another perspective of that night moment, because you understand that that night moment is momentary. It's fleeting. It's not here to stay.
We've just had a comment to the effect of how emotionally we might respond on Instagram, and a psychologist friend of ours is saying that one of the ways that we can process our mortality and the mortality of those we love is by not stifling our emotions due to our beliefs, and that believers should not feel any kind of way about feeling sadness, and basically feeling all of their feelings. Is not in opposition with your belief. So it's fine to have that Saturday moment. So we discussed this before, where Christ has died on Friday. Saturday is an awful traumatic day before the Sunday comes. It's fine to experience that Saturday in all of its force and to just feel your feelings. We don't have to feel like we have to jump straight to the Sunday experience. Experiencing the trauma and allowing it to be processed correctly is fine.
And let's understand that people come into this sadness moment differently. All right. So many of us as children were taught, don't be sad, be happy. You know, and you're not allowed to be sad. In some homes, you weren't allowed to be sad, and suddenly you're saying, as an adult, well, you got to actually be present in this moment of sadness.
I was also going to say that in the process of that is very important for us to actually let those feelings come out, as that's something I've always had an issue with in terms of emotional expression, not stifling, because that can create a new trauma. But that's another problem I've had with religion and spirituality, that with gospel music, for example, we always have to be on the mountaintop. Like, you know what I mean? The first verse is like, I was in the club, and then, and then at the end, you're in the church. Like, there's no, sometimes it's just dark. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's just peak. Sometimes it's just tears. And you might not see that light for a day, for a week, for a month. Some traumas are generational. Some traumas take years to kind of process.
But most of it is mixed.
Yeah.
Most of what we go through is mixed. And the beauty about the spirituals, for example, the Negro spirituals and the blues, actually talk about that mix. It mixes the funk, if you like, with the hope.
Another point I've got on Insta, sorry to interrupt that, is this is from Jasmine, there is cultural differentiation in the mannerisms by which death is processed. Some cultures celebrate the death of life due to their traditions. Another point was, in Mexico, they have a day for the dead. Death to them is just a natural part of this human cycle. I think as Christians as well, I think death is a natural part of the human cycle. And I think that's kind of where I wanted to kind of guide us towards. And this is by no means trying to encourage people who are currently going through processing loss, that you need to be at this place in any kind of linear time frame, right? But it's a strong belief of mine that life is a writing of a book, right? Death is the closing of that book, and maybe an opening of another one if you believe in heaven and the afterlife, etc. But when that book is closed, when that first book is closed, that physical death, we can actually read over. the rest of your family can now read over that book as a piece of work. We can now appreciate that book as a piece of work. An album that is never finished can never fully be appreciated. So for me, it's kind of like, that's how I've been able to process the deaths that have happened in my life, by looking at those deaths as, okay, now that I can see that person as a canvas, I can now appreciate that canvas. I can now take from that canvas and live their legacy, live that book that they lived, and share that with other people. And their life can go on in other ways.
So I'm going to move us on to the final section here. We've touched on mortality now, and one of the things I wanted to discuss was how this season of coronavirus and us being in close quarters for extended periods of time, the effect that will have on relationship, and the relationships that we have, whether we are stuck with our partners or whether we're stuck with our wives, husbands, kids. Some of us are stuck with our friends, with our housemates. What effect within this death and rebirth paradigm do you think coronavirus will have on relationships that are being strained with the strain of perpetual presence? In the sense that, you know, we are seeing in the news that these close quarters are affecting different families in different ways. There are some who are growing closer than never grown before. There are others who are experiencing more abuse than they've ever experienced before because they are stuck in the house with their abusers. And there are others who simply, because of now spending time with each other, will discover a host of things about each other that they may not have had time to discover. And it may lead to the growth of their relationship or the demise of their relationships.
Or there's people who are stuck by themselves.
All by themselves. What will they discover about themselves? Johnny's learning about himself more than he probably had time to do so before. So what are these? How can we view this death rebirth paradigm in the lens of relationship? What have you guys had any experiences with personal relationships that had to die in some respect in order to be reborn in a better, more fruitful and beautiful way after? Can you guys maybe share some things?
Before Dad goes on that one, I wanted to, and this was the part of the conversation I was actually most excited about. We don't have a lot of time, and there's two sides to this that I think are important to look at. There's also, for those who are now isolated, it's very hard, right? I live with housemates. They're currently cohabiting with their partners. So, you know, there's a lot of laughter I'm hearing in the corridor.
I hope they're not SDA. You just threw them under the bus, bro.
Anyway, so
you just put them under the concrete. They're not even under the bus. They're under the concrete.
There's a lot of laughter I'm hearing in the corridor that I'm not part of. You know what I mean? I'm having to come to confront that, and it's not easy. But I think also for those who maybe who are on their own, those who are having to renegotiate their relationships by being with each other too much. What's helped me personally, and this is a suggestion I made to everyone, is to structure now social interaction. So timetable, okay, let me call my grandparents, let me FaceTime my grandparents, let me FaceTime my parents, my little brother, my sister. Let me actually create a regime so that I am connected to people. That would be my suggestion. Another suggestion on the last topic, I wanted to make sure that anyone who is experiencing loss or struggling with loss, please make sure that you go and find a good therapist. If you go on the page that we have, Tom,
I'll post a link to the to the Adventist Counselling Service, that
you can handle. Last thing, for all the people on my Instagram Live, please get on YouTube quick. I've got 2 minutes left on Instagram Live because we've been talking for a long time. So jump on the YouTube link. It is in my bio, and then you'll be able to catch the tail end of this conversation. But in terms of the tail end, and this is something I wanted to explore, for a lot of young people, we experience cancel culture, right? There's this cancel culture among us where we don't have a good relationship with endings. Many of us maybe have seen divorce, as myself, or been products of that, or we, in our own relationships, like it's blocked, like, something goes wrong, I'm blocking a person. There's not that confrontation. We don't have a great relationship with death or deaths when it comes to relationships, friendships, when it comes to someone has, crossed the boundary. So what is a more realistic, but what's a more healthy way of processing? Because I don't think forgiveness as a blanket always works. What's a more healthy way of processing that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering which question am I answering? Tom's.
The latter.
My question is in the bin now, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, true, yeah, relationships. Just be happy you have someone to hold. You know them ones there. Just be happy you have someone to hold.
Okay, let's deal with the people alone, as what Jay has said, and then let's circle back to those in relationships.
So can you repeat your question, please? Jayy Angelo.
That's I'm not appreciating the key that you said there. No, essentially what I'm asking is it was a bit long-winded, so I'm untangling it. But yeah, what methods in terms of our spirituality? Prayer is obviously the first one that comes to mind. How can we still maintain our sanity while locked in, just from your perspective as someone who knows the word well? And I think the second one, I'll let Tom lead on that discussion, because I wanted to.
Well, the thing is, I've answered that question already, and that is really to tap into the power of love. I think that's what you do, and as an outgrowth of all of that, you come into some of the stuff you itemized, and I want to push it back to you, Jayy Angelo. The idea that you this idea that you talked about structuring, having time slots in the day to call such and such. Where did that come from? Because I remember having this discussion with you before, and you were talking about honoring this and honoring that. And I think because what you are talking about is something that comes out of a value system. It's not just something that is, tick the box kind of thing.
What has kept me in life, and I'll be a bit more raw with this, but I've gone through, as many people have, I've gone through periods of depression, anxiety. I remember those periods a year ago where I started to get eczema because of, like, as a symptom, I've never had eczema in my life, as a symptom of depression, anxiety. And that's always been an abstract for me. Those have always been abstract terms. Even when I was experiencing them, I didn't really understand. It wasn't something that made sense to me. And what had kept me through that is understanding, or growing and understanding, how important giving is. I remember a conversation I had with my dad. I can't remember what we were speaking about, but it was some deep trauma and pain. And Dad said, you have to love your way out of the darkness. And if Dad don't mind, there was a time in my teens where I literally couldn't see me and my dad's relationship repairing and being healthy. I just couldn't see that. There was a lot of pain, there was a lot of separation, and it was very difficult. And the term that Dad just gave in terms of loving your way out of the darkness was something that helped me cope with my own depressions, my own anxieties, my parents' divorce, not having access to my father that I would have wanted to, all of these different things. And the way that did that was when I was put in those positions where I'm confronted with a trauma, I'm confronted with something that's very difficult. I ramp up my giving. And what I mean by that is not to empty yourself out so you are drained completely, but find ways to be a source of light, because when you give, you gain, right? So
Just say something on that. When you give,
sorry, go on.
No, I want you to say something. When you give, you gain.
So, for example, there's biblical principles in the Bible. Prayer is a powerful tool, by the way. I prayed the other day for a mentor and I got one. I have many mentors in my life already that I'm blessed to have, but it was for a specific thing. And one of the things I've started to understand is there's principles in the Bible that help you access certain things. When you, there are reasons why the Bible says tithe. There are reasons why the Bible says honor your father and mother, honor those above you, honor those who gave to you. For the last maybe 6 months, I've been on more so recently, but I started to understand, and I'm trying to go on a pilgrimage to try and give back to those who gave to me when I was younger. Parents, uncles, aunties, those who invested in me when I was younger. When I have gone through darkness and I reached out to those people and tried to give, and also to those beneath me, those above and beneath. When I gave to those above and honored, God, it's almost like I was honored back. I felt enriched by giving. It was almost like I was paying back a credit loan, if that makes sense. So I felt freed. I also experienced, it was like I attracted some other benefits from that. In terms of giving beneath, if you look in the Bible, when you give downwards, you're giving to Jesus himself. That's what Jesus says. He is the least of these. So when you, whether it's the homeless, whether it's children, I work with young people. The reason why those things are so rewarding, people who work in nursing homes, whatever, if you think about the NHS right now, there's a lot of people who are sacrificing to give. They may not be gaining money, but best believe spiritually, right? They are, their spiritual credit score is high in terms of mercy, in terms of love. You will find that there is a lot of there are spiritual things that you attract when you give. And that's not negotiable. That's the law of God. And those things transcend religion, like across religions, those are principles. So when I've gone through certain things, there's loads of things that I've done where, be creative. Music was a great help, etc. But giving has really saved my life, right? In so many ways. And that can be giving, create. If you have a gift from God, I don't want to waffle too much, so please interrupt me.
No. You've made a point, yeah.
Yeah, if you have a gift from God, that can be your creative gift. That can be writing, that can be dance, that can be cooking, that can be your acts of kindness. Whatever your gift is, you've been placed on this earth to give that. So when you're going through times of darkness, you're shining your light will help bring light to you and help give perspective.
And I think that's the powerful point, given what we're learning about society and ourselves during this time of crisis, is that people are loving their way through the darkness without necessarily understanding or articulating consciously that that's what they're doing. I think there is something, as Gifford mentioned earlier in the conversation, that is the fact that we're made in the image of God. There is an alignment to sacrificing oneself or giving oneself for the betterment of others that is inbuilt in the code of humanity. And I think that's a really practical way of how we can remain positive in this time of crisis, is by fine-tuning our antennas to opportunities for us to be able to love more, to be able to give more of ourselves, whether it's our time. And whenever people say give, especially in a Christian context, there's always a financial connotation. That is probably one of the most shallow ways of giving of oneself. I think time, effort, love is probably one of the more meaningful ways. And I just wanted to really land the situation here on a more relationship note, on a relationship note again, is what do you think the key takeaways of this are going to be in terms of our personal relationships? So in terms of our marriages, what things would you say to actively or consciously seek to do as we spend this time together so much that will strengthen the sinews of those relationships?
I think there's loads. I think one of, if or when you get through this, you will find that listening has become a very powerful tool. Just to listen to the other person, and by listening, I don't just mean listen to their words, but I mean listen to their body language, listen to their silence, listen to their emotions. And I think that in and of itself will enable you to understand the other, thereby understand yourself in relation to the other. So I would say one important tool or treasure that we will take away from this is this beautiful gift of being able to listen.
Fantastic. And my final word on that lane would be, again, within this framework of death and rebirth, is in romantic relationships in particular, but I think to some degree in other relationships also, there has to be a death of some kind of idealism or infatuation in order for real love. And I'm looking at you, Johnny, here. In order for, Jayy Angelo. In order for, in order for true love that is principally structured in order to take place. And I think this experience will accelerate that process for a lot of people, because I've been married for 4 years, and to some degree there is still some honeymooning ideas and energy that's there, which I would like to maintain for as long as possible, might I add. However, I think it's also making room for a more structured principle love that takes the shape of what you discussed. Learning to listen to the silence is something which is massive.
Yeah, a light switch has just gone.
Gone on, you mean? Switched on?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Not gone out.
Yeah.
To do you like that, Tom? But essentially, what I'm starting to understand is, and I remember this idea first coming in the form of love being a choice. not feeling, right? Because feelings change, right? Your feelings will change. Death will occur in life. Things will stop. Things will end. Love, so real love then, the love that we're trying to deal with is a love that transcends changes, right? A love that exists. So when there's a passing, there is a death, that love is still existing, which allows for a rebirth. Because if the love died with the death, then there is no substance, spiritual substance. I'm speaking conceptually here. There's no spiritual substance to carry on that journey. If you think of the cycle of life, what continues then is love. When you think about a relationship ending, this is something I've really struggled with, right? I really have a hang up about losing people that I care about. Like, that's just a thing I struggle with. So in terms of love being a power that you choose every day, even when you don't feel it, you choose to choose love every day in your relationships. Is that a way that you can help overpower the natural end of things, the natural ending of things?
Yeah, and I think to a large degree that's what discipline is. It's doing the thing even when there's the feeling to do it isn't present. And I think one of the things that trips a lot of young relationships up, or relationships of any kind, friendships, platonic ones, whatever, is I don't feel like doing this and therefore I will not. And the death of the relationship comes with the death of the infatuation or the feeling to do the things. But I think the relationships that last are the ones where the choice to love transcends the existence of the feeling to want to do it.
I have a question, Dad. So would you say...
Sorry, can we just acknowledge that Gifford is nodding? Can we just appreciate that?
That moment.
Yeah.
I got an A in my dissertation here, bro. You can't just skip over it.
I'm in the footnotes though, but you did a little stuff. But Dad, a question I was gonna have, and this is something I've struggled with.
So this is the last 5 minutes for our viewers. We're gonna try and land that. Yeah.
To love powerfully, right? Do you have to die to self to love? And how do you die to self and still love without putting yourself at risk of being drained, without putting yourself at risk of being used? How do you...
I think you can't, you don't do it without putting yourself at risk. You're always at risk. That's the power of love. Love is of such that you're always going to be at risk, because love is a death on, the more you love is the more you die to yourself. So the act of dying to oneself is an act of loving oneself.
That one's going to take me a minute to kind of...
So and therein lies the maturation of love. Because remember, love is dynamic. It doesn't stay on one plane. It's growing all the time. And the more it grows is the more it engulfs, and the more it embraces rather. And the more it embraces is the more it engulfs. And it continues and continues and continues until you are a selfless being. I mean, that's the power of love. And
in a material society, what is the power of being selfless? What is the purpose of being selfless? Why should we as Christians still move towards selflessness in a society that tells us to consistently only think of ourselves and only preserve ourselves and preserve our energy and preserve our, you know what I mean? What is the purpose of self?
Because society tells you to do that in order to protect yourself. And to protect yourself means you're only going to circumscribe yourself, i.e. you're only going to measure at a certain height and a certain level. And society is comfortable with that. Society is comfortable with seeing you in a box and being self-contained in a box, all right? What we're saying is grow beyond yourself, because the moment you grow beyond yourself is the moment that you have burst through your own comfort zone, and the moment you are actually impacting other people's lives. Society gets very, very nervous when you're flourishing, when you are thriving as an individual, because you're touching people all the time. And that's what self-sacrifice teaches you.
So to be sorry, Tom, an empowered individual, that requires dying, your ego dying, right?
Yes.
So the death of your ego enables the life of your love.
Yeah.
And the life of your love enables you to transcend the limitations of endings.
Yes, and the limitations of what society imposes on you.
Okay.
I think that's a good place for us to land the plane. A nice simple point there. Not at all. I hope we were able to digest that. This is going to exist on
So
YouTube.
can I just say one line?
Yes,
There's a
please.
line I was saving.
Please.
And it is this: live as if you will die tomorrow. In this coronavirus, live as though you will die, as if you will die tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Learn as if you will live forever.
That's powerful.
Therein lies urgency, and therein lies your legacy.
That's powerful.
So,
are you going to try and top that, Jay? Really?
No.
Is this really what you're trying to do here, right?
What I'm just trying to, before we leave, I'm just trying to make that tangible.
Yeah.
For those who maybe need that a bit more literal. So, in terms of being in a time where there's so much news about loss, there's so much panic, there's so much people talking about 5G, this, people burning down poles in Birmingham, because they're shook. You know what I mean? So there's so much misinformation, there's so much conspiracy, there's so much fear, there's so much apocalypse. How do we die to anxiety? How do we die to panic and give life to, and focus on, because panic distracts you from doing what your actual purpose is, which is to give and to love. So how do we stay focused on that goal? And how do we give in a way that keeps us living, that keeps us sustained, that keep us nourished and not starving? I'm sorry, I know we're trying to wrap up.
That's your last comment, Jay. You're banned now. Carry on.
The idea, this anxiety thing. See, fear can be very self-destructive, right? I think there are two kinds of fear. There is the kind of fear that is neurotic, and that kind of fear is self-destructive. Is when we talk about paranoia and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But there is the kind of fear that is wisdom fear, the fear that respects, fear that understands one's limitations, fear that respects others and respects relationships. And I think that's the type of fear that we need to imbibe. That's the type of fear we need to live on. So when I say live as if you'll die tomorrow, I'm talking about on the promises and on the premises of what we were talking about today, just in this past hour. And that is love, really. Love, and grow in love, because that's what the Father expects of us. Be ye therefore perfect in love, even as your Heavenly Father is perfect in love. And when I say learn as if you will live forever, I'm talking about invest in life, invest in people, invest in yourself, as if you will live forever. And therein lies that balance of urgency, i.e. live as though you will die tomorrow. There's your urgency. And your legacy, i.e. invest in life, invest in people, as though you will live forever.
And I think to that end, I'll end on this point. Pastor Sophia Pert on YouTube made a powerful point, which is being present is a powerful way to love. And I'm kind of the thought that comes to mind is for God so loved the world that he gave us his presence. And I think that's one of the ways that this period that we are celebrating in Easter reminds us that it was his presence that redeemed us. And what we can practically do to dispel anxiety and fear, as Jay was articulating, is being present for those who are on the fringes of society. Because I think in witnessing how much people are suffering gives us a certain degree of perspective on our own suffering. Whenever I've been in the presence of those suffering more than me, it immediately dispels my own self-pity or my own anxiety for my own condition, because I realize others have it much worse. So I think loving in the avenue of our presence in those who are afflicted right now is a powerful way for us to dispel the anxiety, but also love.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gifford, for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you, guys.
Jay, thank you also for your antagonism and for your thoughtfulness and for your companionship in this journey of social media and digital strategy. And guys, for those who are watching online, we are going to be having more of these conversations every Sunday evening at 8 o'clock. We're going to be inviting a topical expert or somebody who has a lot to offer in a particular idea or thought, and we'll be having Gifford, I'm sure, a few more times to discuss many other things. Somebody here wrote that anxiety needs its own hour, and I agree with that. We may touch on that when we deal with mental health in general. We'll bring someone who has a powerful insight on that. But thank you so much. Please share this link with your friends so that they can see it if they missed the live. And also, we are going to post the link to the Adventist Counselling Network on the SCC Youth Facebook page. And I'll also post the link in the comment section of the YouTube live video there. So if anybody has been negatively impacted or has had cause to feel as though they need personal help in the way of counselling, please contact them, the Adventist Counselling Network. Gifford, that's what they're called, right?
Cornerstone.
Cornerstone. They're called Cornerstone. Please reach out to Cornerstone. They are here to help you and to provide you guidance and counselling during times of crisis in your life. Jay, and then we'll ask Gifford to pray to close.
In closing as well, we're starting a little initiative called No Wars. So the reason why the hashtag is No Wars is because the walls that are built up between us are forced. We're trying to bring those walls down, right? I'm stuck in my room, man. I'm going crazy. So what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks is we're going to be doing a load of different things to help connect us. Sunday is our day of spiritual feeding and intellectual stimulation. And throughout the week, we'll have days dedicated to our different needs. So look out on our page. The pages Tom will drop in a comment or something so everyone can see on the YouTube. I will have all of these things on my personal pages to help us connect. You can watch this video on YouTube. If you've just joined in, you missed the madness. It's been amazing. So jump on the link is in my bio, and you can watch from whatever part. And please send us messages on subjects that you feel that you have a need to speak on, ideas on how we can help each other connect. Essentially, myself and Tom and the rest of the team are focused on helping us connect in this time, right? So we're all up for your suggestions.
And finally, if there's any content creators who want to contribute to creating content for the SCC Youth Department during this time as we put out more digital content, please get in touch with us through the YouTube page or through the website. We would love to hear from you and do more. Gifford, if you can please pray to close, and then we'll wrap this up.
Okay, let's pray, shall we? Father, what we pray for right now is for your presence. We pray that your presence will reach into those homes of loneliness, those homes that are suffering due to different kinds of abuses, those homes that are being challenged because of the coronavirus. We pray for those homes that have suffered a loss as a result of the virus. And just ask, Father, that in each of these homes, that you will make your presence felt. And in your presence, may we experience death of self and rebirth of you in us, that we will become better people for each other, for you, and for ourselves. And may we therefore approach the rest of this day, what is left of it, with a hope that tomorrow will be better. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Right. God bless. Thanks, Pop.
Thank you very much, sir.
Love you. Love you guys.
Love you too.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. And I hope everyone has received some hope as a result of this, and we'll see you in the week and again next week for No Walls Talks again. Have a good evening. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Peace, 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 peace.